Coming up today on the Nick Craig Show, Governor Josh Stein is proposing a nearly $3 billion spending increase in North Carolina, chopping off the Opportunity Scholarship Program and getting rid of tax cuts that the General Assembly has implemented. We'll get into all the details coming up. And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. Don't forget that you can take the show with you 24/7 on demand in your favorite podcast app. It's real simple. Just search for the Nick Craig Show. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our program is brought to you by the law group here in Wilmington, Melissa Gott and her team. You can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call, 910-251-6088. As we talked about in great detail yesterday, the General Assembly kicking off its legislative short session here in 2026. A lot on the table. The biggest, probably no question about it, is the state's lack of a budget. The new fiscal year started July the 1st of 2025. Since that period of time, the state has been without a new budget. That does not mean that the government has not continued to operate. We have seen that play out as the previous year's budget remains in effect, and this has, of course, been a major political talking point for Democrats in North Carolina, that the legislature cannot come together on a budget, and it is going to be fascinating to see if leadership within the North Carolina House and Senate are going to be able to get together on a plan. Prior, I should say, to lawmakers gaveling in Raleigh yesterday, the governor and Democrat Josh Stein made his way to a press conference in Raleigh to lay out a $35 billion budget, proposing a nearly $3 billion spending increase, talking about reducing tax cuts here in North Carolina, freezing the Opportunity Scholarship Program, and continuing tax and spend policies that we know are not beneficial for the state of North Carolina. It was a lengthy press conference from Governor Josh Stein, and instead of me telling you what he said, let's hear directly from him. Here's the governor in Raleigh yesterday.
About 13 months ago, I stood here and presented my long session budget, a balanced budget that placed value on our state's children and invested in their future. 13 months later, North Carolina still does not have a budget, but the needs remain. And that's what we're going to talk about this morning. North Carolina has a lot to be proud of. In many ways, we're the envy of the nation. This past year, we've been ranked the #1 state for business, the #1 state for economic development, the #1 state for workforce development. We're the #1 state where people from other states are moving. We're the #1 state for job growth. We're experiencing this success because of our people.
No. That is not true. We are experiencing that success, the #1 state for business, the #1 state for job growth, all of the mass migration into North Carolina. We are experiencing that for one reason and one reason only. It's not former Governor Roy Cooper, and it's not Governor Josh Stein. It's because Republicans over the last 15 years have fundamentally changed the state of North Carolina. That is why we are experiencing the success that we are right now. It was not Roy Cooper that was advocating for tax cuts in Raleigh when he was the governor, and actually quite the contrary. He vetoed budget after budget after budget that included tax cuts. It's not Josh Stein, who you'll hear coming up in some later clips, who wants to keep tax rates where they are and presumably would like to see them increase so that the state can generate more money. We are in this position because of strong conservative, strong fiscal responsibility in Raleigh. It is very disappointing to see and so incredibly disingenuous to see Governor Stein make these comments and not be able to wrap his head around why the state is in the position that it is right now. More from the governor.
And because as a state, we have invested in them over decades. But we're putting that winning formula at risk. Our state has fallen behind in key metrics for public education, public safety, and health care. Since the General Assembly last enacted a full budget, 2.5 years ago, we have added 325,000 new residents to North Carolina, seen 6 to 8% inflation, suffered the worst natural disaster in state history, and experienced a federal government placing unprecedented unfunded mandates on state and local governments. We cannot simply stand still and hope for the best.
You know, I hate to sound like a broken record. I really do. But Governor Stein, we have two different track records to look at. We have 100+ years of Democrat control leading up to 2010. That left the state in a miserable financial position with hundreds of millions of dollars owed to the federal government as it related to medical debt, having no savings account, no rainy day fund, the highest tax rates anywhere in the southeastern half of the United States. That is what Democrats ushered into North Carolina over a span of more than 100 years. And in a relatively short time, in comparison, over the last 15 years, we have seen Republicans in the legislature continue to reduce the tax rate while at the same time getting us out of debt as it related to that federal government debt. Continuing to build up what is now called the Rainy Day Fund, which is used for natural disasters and issues, for example, like we saw back 19 months ago with the devastation and destruction left in the wake of Hurricane Helene. We've seen the compare and contrast. We know what the difference is. You can look at the track record and see what Democrat leadership looked like here in North Carolina. It was not a prosperous state. It wasn't. The state was broke. That has changed. And so for the governor to claim, oh, here we go, and we've been hearing this now also, I'll note, for 15 years. Oh, here we go. We're right on the brink of falling off the edge. It's truly happening this time. We're truly going to fall over this time. It's been the boy who cries wolf on these tax cuts and these reforms out of the General Assembly for a significant period of time. None of it has ever come into fruition. Here is more from Governor Stein now on education.
If we're going to continue to build on our long-term economic success, we must start by investing in our public schools. Our children truly are our future, so investing in them must be our greatest priority. Yet, we are ranked 49th in the country in terms of how much we spend on each student's education. It's pitiful. We rank lower than all of our neighboring states in starting teacher pay. We're 43rd in the country in teacher pay, and we have one child care slot for every 5 families who are looking for one. These are some embarrassing and unacceptable facts.
All they talk about is funding. All they talk about are those metrics, but they refuse to talk about, and when I say they, I'm talking about the Democrats, refuse to talk about the metrics that would actually lead to more prosperous public education here in North Carolina. More from the governor.
My budget will make starting teacher salaries in North Carolina the highest in the Southeast while significantly raising wages for all teachers, eliminating pay plateaus, and bringing back master's pay. The budget also focuses on student achievement. By expanding Advanced Teaching Roles Initiative, my budget will give our best teachers an opportunity to take on leadership roles, impact more students, and earn more money for it. We also want to extend the gains students are making from the science of reading by expanding the initiative to additional grades. My budget also proposes several investments to enhance student safety and well-being. I call for more funding for school safety grants to keep kids safe at school. We need more support staff like counselors, nurses, social workers. They in the schools can help to improve students' mental health, reduce absenteeism, and strengthen academic performance. My budget will hire more of all of them. We will also fund long overdue repairs at public schools across the state. We will adjust our special education funding formula to better support exceptional students. And we will work to reduce childhood hunger. I am proposing free school breakfast to invest in kids' health, attendance, behavior, and academic success.
So we're going to increase all of this spending. We're going to increase teacher salaries, make it highest in the Southeast. You noticed in the minute and a half that the governor just spoke, not once did he reference or mention the academics of education, improving test scores, making North Carolina children more literate, making their test grades and their test scores higher? So all of this money, but no metrics laid out here by Governor Josh Stein. The governor talking about education in this, spent a lot of time talking about education during his 2026-2027 fiscal year budget proposal that he went through in Raleigh yesterday, talking about making teachers the highest paid in the Southeast, talking about expanding all these programs, of which I don't disagree with, expanding programs and making more things available to students. That's not the issue at all. The problem is, what is the metric going to look like on that, right? If you're going to do all of those things, that's a fine thought to have. That's a fine thing to advocate for. But as a taxpayer here in North Carolina, my question is, what kind of metrics are we going to see as a result? Because at the end of the day, you can increase teacher pay by 10x if you want. If students are not learning more, if students are not more proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic, none of that really matters, because at the end of the day, it's not a teacher's salary that determines whether a child is getting a good education. It's how they're scoring on tests. And we have consistently seen in states all across the country, there is not a direct correlation between increasing teacher pay and better results for students. We see this in states like New York and California, where you'll hear Democrats constantly claim, oh, look at this, we spend $15,000 a year per student, $20,000 a year per student. Those test scores are, in most cases, very much the mean, very much the average across the United States. So the governor talking about public education issues, it wasn't long for him to step into the typical Democrat trap of talking about how school choice is bad for North Carolina, a major losing political issue. Here's the governor.
And if we're serious about the success of North Carolina's 1.5 million public school students, we should not be taking money away from them to pay for wealthy parents to send their kids to unaccountable private schools.
Ah, yes.
Over the next decade, if left unchecked, we're going to take $7.5 billion away from our public schools and spend them on private schools with little to no accountability.
Now, I got to stop the governor right here, because I found that to be an interesting line. Little to no accountability. That's his big concern. Now, all of a sudden, Democrats concerned about accountability. Little to no accountability in private schools. I can only ask this question as genuinely as possible. What does accountability look like as it relates to public schools? If based on your address, based on your zip code, if your child is districted into one of the hundreds of schools that are consistently failing across the state of North Carolina, they receive grades by the state. There are hundreds of schools that have an F, according to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. What kind of accountability exists there? If your child is going to a school and not getting the quality education that you want, what sort of accountability exists in the public school system? It's not a loaded question. The answer is it doesn't exist. This idea that public schools are accountable and private schools are not makes absolutely no sense. If anything, it's the complete opposite. If there is a public school, a private school that is not providing a good education, parents will leave because they have the ability to do that. That school will lose enrollment. That school will lose students, and eventually it will close its doors. You don't see that in the public school system. These failing schools continue and continue and continue with absolutely no accountability whatsoever.
And for the record, the voucher program is not about expanding choice.
No, of course not, Governor
Nearly
Stein.
every single student who received a private school voucher for the first time never attended a public school. It's simply taking public dollars to send to families who were already sending their children to a private school, parents who could already afford to send their children to a private school.
Well, school choice remains an incredibly popular issue, regardless of what the governor and Democrats think. It's something that they're on the losing side of. Here's the most recent polling on this issue. This is from the Carolina Journal poll that took place in January that asked this question. This is the question directly from the poll. All North Carolina families are eligible to apply for taxpayer-funded scholarships through the Opportunity Scholarship Program. Scholarships are awarded on a sliding scale prioritizing lowest family incomes. Awards range from $3,500 to $7,700 and can be used to attend a private school of their choice. In the 25-26 school year, more than 100,000 students have received Opportunity Scholarship awards. Do you support or oppose the Opportunity Scholarship Program? 63.7% of voters either strongly or somewhat support the program. 63.7%, compared to just 29.2% that oppose the program, with 7.2% being unsure of the Opportunity Scholarship Program and whether they support it or not. This is a losing issue for Democrat Governor Josh Stein and for Democrats not only here in North Carolina, but across the country that continue to rally against school choice. Newsflash: parents and guardians want their children to get the best education possible. If that's a public school, great. If it's a charter school, great. If it's a private school, great. If it's a homeschooling, great. They don't care where it's taking place. They just want the quality education. And polling has consistently shown, this poll that has now been asking this question going back to January of 2023, and every single poll since that period of time has shown that more than 60% of people support the Opportunity Scholarship Program. It's not going anywhere, to the chagrin of Governor Josh Stein, to the dismay of Democrats. The Opportunity Scholarship Program is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. Families and parents and grandparents across North Carolina are taking advantage of the program, and they very much enjoy the program and enjoy using it. Maybe Democrats should be worried about this. Here's another question from the Carolina Journal poll. Overall, how satisfied are you with the quality of K-12 education students receive statewide in North Carolina public schools? 52.8% are dissatisfied, compared to just 29% that say they are satisfied, with 18% remaining unsure. So you've got public schools that are underwater in terms of satisfaction from parents. Opportunity scholarships, school choice programs like the OPS program, the school voucher program, very popular across the state, more than 60% supporting it. And you've still got Democrats like Governor Josh Stein rallying against it. It is a losing political issue. And it is astonishing to me that now, 4 or 5 years after the OSP program was expanded more broadly statewide, that you still have this kind of hand-wringing and pearl-clutching going on from the Democrats. Guys, you're not going to turn the tide on this. Parents and families want choice in their education. They want choice in everything. You can choose a million different places to go get coffee in the morning. People inherently like the ability to choose and have options for things. And when they see, and unfortunately for many families across North Carolina, their only option is a failing public school, they want to take advantage of the program. Great comment coming in on our show. Just got my notification yesterday that we were approved for our scholarship next year. Congratulations on that. And I'm sure that you'll be taking advantage of that, as you should, as that program has been expanded now statewide here in North Carolina. So again, a major losing issue for Stein and the Democrats. They continue hammering away at the Opportunity Scholarship Program, and I don't get it. It is completely illogical to me. It is a losing political issue, a losing political message. We'll grab a quick break here. On the other side, we'll dive into some more comments from Governor Josh Stein as he laid out his $35 billion spending spree yesterday in Raleigh. He'll talk about taxes and costs, talk about how Republicans, again, have no idea what they're doing as it relates to state government. We'll get into all of those details coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to tell you about the law group here in Wilmington, Melissa Gott and her team. And when legal challenges arise, you got to make sure that you put your trust in the law group. Now, going back to 2003, Melissa Gott and the experienced team of attorneys over at the Law Group have continued to provide high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating a real estate transaction, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong criminal defense. If so, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, ladies and gentlemen. They're located in downtown Wilmington, and they're just a phone call away at 910-251-6088. You can also visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call for any legal questions, any legal challenges that you might be dealing with, 910-251-6088, or visit them online, lawgroupnc.com. It's the Law Group. Experience and dedication you can rely on. We appreciate the Law Group and their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. All right, quick break. More from Governor Josh Stein coming up as the Nick Craig Show continues streaming live this Wednesday morning, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. Good Wednesday to you, and welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. We are continuing our coverage today of a press conference that took place in Raleigh yesterday as Democrat Governor Josh Stein laid out his fiscal year 26-27 budget proposal. It expands the size and scope of government by nearly $3 billion and comes in total with a $35 billion price tag. We've already heard him talking about education issues. He hates the fact that families across the state of North Carolina can benefit from the Opportunity Scholarship Program. He and Democrats alike across the country do not believe that families should have the ability for school choice, and for lower income, middle income families that frankly cannot afford private schools, that they should just be stuck in the public education system regardless of whether the school is giving their child a quality education or not. Governor Josh Stein thinks that that program is bad and doesn't want you to have access to that. Now, there are currently set to be tax decreases here in North Carolina. Part of the Republican majority taking control back in 2010, 2011 was reducing the tax burden on North Carolina businesses and families. And as you should be not surprised to hear, the governor believes that that is a bad thing. And while he says he doesn't want to raise taxes, we've got to keep them where they are right now. Here's Governor Josh Stein yesterday.
Childcare is one cost that's weighing heavily on families. Another is the cost of housing. You may remember that I said that 325,000 people have moved here since we last passed a full budget. And you've heard it said before that if you will build it, they will come. Well, it turns out in North Carolina, if you don't build it, they will still come. So my budget invests in building more workforce housing, and it rewards local governments that increase housing supply in their jurisdictions. Whether it's housing and childcare, or it's electricity, groceries, and gas, too many families are struggling to make ends meet and cover their monthly expenses. That's why in my budget, I am cutting taxes to put more money into the pockets of North Carolina's working families. My budget proposes 4 tax cuts: a refundable child and dependent care tax cut to help parents afford the cost of child care, a working families tax cut to ensure that low to moderate income workers keep more of what they earn, and it could mean up to $800 for certain families each year, a back-to-school sales tax holiday in August to help families afford school supplies while holding local governments harmless on revenue, and a larger standard personal income deduction for every North Carolinian taxpayer. During this time of economic insecurity, my budget also enhances unemployment benefits to support people who lose their job through no fault of their own as they work to find their next job. These investments and these tax cuts are what it looks like to be truly pro-family.
Ah, yes. Mr. Pro-Family, Josh Stein. Pro-family, unless, of course, you want to send your kid to a private school. Pro-family, unless you want to homeschool your children. Mr. Family, Governor Josh Stein here in North Carolina. As I mentioned at the open, we have seen in North Carolina a fundamental change over the last 15 years. A state that was previously broke, had the highest tax rates in the Southeast. That's what we saw leading up to 2010. Since that period of time, we have seen very strategic reductions of the corporate tax rate, which is set to be 0 by the year 2030, and a continued decline in the personal income tax rate, which if you pay taxes in North Carolina, which by the way, like more than literally half the state does not. But if you pay taxes here in North Carolina, you benefit from, regardless of whether you're married, you're single, you have kids, it doesn't matter. You're paying the personal income tax rate. But no surprise, Governor Josh Stein says Republicans have been doing it wrong for the last 15 years. Meanwhile, he will continue, as you heard at the open, applaud the state of North Carolina, number one state for business, number one state for job growth, number one state for people moving in, all of these great accomplishments, but the governor cannot connect the dots as to why all of those things are happening. And surprise, surprise, Republicans are wrong. You haven't heard that before, have you?
If we go through with the pre-programmed tax breaks that mostly benefit wealthy folks.
Now, hold on a second here. Hold on a second. That is a flat out lie. As the personal income's tax rate continues to be reduced, that does not help just wealthy individuals in North Carolina. That helps everybody that pays taxes. Now, here's the dirty little secret that people like Governor Josh Stein won't tell you. The reason that most of the time tax cuts, quote unquote, don't help people that are on the very low side of the income class is because they don't pay taxes anyway. That's the dirty little secret that Josh Stein and Democrats won't tell you. You can't reduce taxes for people that don't pay them in the first place. That's the problem with this. Well, tax cuts only help the rich. Well, they're the only ones paying taxes. So that doesn't really work out for people like Josh Stein and for the Democrats. If you are on the very, very low side of the income tier, you're not paying anything. So there's no way to cut your taxes from 0. You're not paying anything. And so it is the middle class, upper middle class, and higher income individuals that are in fact paying 90% of the taxes, not only here in North Carolina, but across the nation. So yes, of course, Governor Stein, there's going to be tax breaks. When you lower the personal income tax rate, people that make a lot of money are going to pay less. But it's not strategic. We have a flat rate here in North Carolina. Whether you make $50,000 a year or $50 million a year, you are paying a personal income tax rate that is exactly the same. Individuals that are low income earners just don't pay taxes. You literally can't cut the rate. Sorry, Governor Stein.
Will be undermining a critical element of what makes North Carolina so special. So I'm calling on the General Assembly to look closely at the current realities we live in and to hit pause on these outdated pre-programmed tax breaks.
No thanks.
And if we don't, we will face an imminent shortfall in our budget of $5 billion, risking massive cuts to critical services, the likes of which we have not experienced in North Carolina since the Great Recession 17 years ago.
Under Democrat control.
North Carolina has the 9th lowest state and local tax burden in the country, has the lowest tax on businesses in the country, and is already cutting taxes $1.3 billion this year. To be clear, let's not raise taxes, but let's take a pause on these cuts and maintain the rates exactly where they are. Budgets require choices. And with the choice between investing in our children's education and the health of our kids versus giving money to corporate shareholders, or between cutting taxes for working families and cutting taxes for wealthy out-of-staters, I choose North Carolina's kids, families, and future every time.
It's just a total lie. The reduction of the personal income tax rate, which currently in North Carolina for this tax year, you're paying your 2025 taxes now, is 4.25%. It is set to reduce to 3.99% for the tax year 2026 that we're in right now, that you will file in early 2027. So when the governor says that that doesn't help middle class, working class families, he's just dead wrong, because it just that is just not the case. It absolutely helps them. That is totally and completely illogical. But no surprise to anybody, this is the line that Democrats continue to run on. That's helping corporations. I don't understand how reducing the personal income tax rate is helping corporations. There is zero logic in that statement whatsoever. We have seen the growth in North Carolina. We have seen people moving to this state. We have seen businesses coming to this state. We have seen an insane amount of job creation in this state because government has gotten out of the way. Republicans in Raleigh have cut red tape. They have reduced regulation. They have reduced burdensome cost. And at the same time, they have made it more affordable by reducing tax rates to make it more affordable to live in North Carolina. We saw what Democrats did with this state for 100 years. It was an unmitigated disaster. They cannot be trusted with operating our state's budget. They will drive North Carolina's economy into the ground. And you can take that to the bank. That is absolutely what will happen if they are able to get control of the General Assembly later this year and begin their tax and spend policies. Because, immediately that's what they will do. Well, we got to raise more revenue, and instead of cutting from government, the only solution is to raise your taxes so we can generate more money. Folks, it's not something that is unexpected. It's not something that we don't have a very clear track record of seeing. Again, go back prior to 2010. Don't take my word for it. Go look at the news articles. Go look at the reporting as to where the state of North Carolina was from the year 2000 to 2010. It was freaking miserable, all at the hands of Democrats here in North Carolina. Governor Josh Stein on Tuesday laid out his budget for fiscal year 26-27, of which I'll note the governor has no process in the budget system. It is completely a legislative function. It is the North Carolina House and Senate that come up with a budget. They pass it. Now, the governor does have a say on whether he will sign or veto the budget, but he is not part of this. That's why he calls it his recommended state budget. Lawmakers have no obligation to take anything that he says to heart. Hopefully they won't, because the vast majority of what he's recommending is bad for the state of North Carolina. We've heard about education. We've now heard about how Democrats have all the great solutions for how to deal with taxes. Republicans have no idea what they're talking about. The governor then transitioned into jobs and increasing the workforce, as well as the community college system. Some interesting things in here as well.
Since January 1st, 2025, 15 months, we've announced nearly 41,000 new jobs, nearly $28 billion in capital investment. It's at every corner of the state, and these are good jobs with good wages. Economic development is a team sport, and I tell you, Team North Carolina is the best in the business. We've got to keep at it. We've got to not only grow this economy, but make sure that it works for everybody. We have to invest in people so that they have the knowledge and skills to succeed in what is an ever-changing economy. A four-year college is great for many people, but it's not right for every person. And someone shouldn't have to have a bachelor's degree to earn an income sufficient to support a family. That's why I propose more support for short-term workforce training programs and apprenticeships to expand pathways available to good-paying jobs.
Actually, a great idea.
In many ways, our state's community colleges are our secret weapon. Almost all North Carolinians will live within 30 minutes of a community college, and these schools have great relationships with our state's employers. They know what students need to succeed, so we must accelerate their impact. We must commit to Propel NC. It's a new funding formula that prioritizes programs in high-demand, high-wage fields.
I actually agree with the governor on a lot of what he said there. I don't know all about this Propel NC program. I heard his little ditty about it, but don't necessarily have all of the details to have an informed opinion. But what he says there about apprenticeships and the workforce training and stuff is all accurate and all true. And he is right when he says that we do have that secret weapon in the North Carolina community college system. All across the state, community colleges can easily provide and do currently provide a lot of these certificate-based and apprenticeship-based programs where individuals do not have to go through 4 years of college. They can do it within a year or two, apprenticeship program, training programs, become a plumber, HVAC technician, electrician. A lot of this stuff can be done with very high incomes right out of quote-unquote school, which are these programs through the community college system. We do need, and there are a lot of shortages in those programs across not only North Carolina, but across the country. So actually, surprisingly, in full agreement with the governor on that. He then turned his attention to public safety. This is a major issue that Democrats are going to face in the midterm elections. You can look at any major blue Democrat city across the entirety of the United States and see that crime is likely out of control. Soft on crime policies have made these places so incredibly dangerous, and now the governor and many other Democrats are trying to walk this back. Here's Governor Stein.
Everyone wants to live in safety, to go about their daily lives without fear.
Thanks.
But
Great
several
idea.
recent high-profile incidents have ended in tragedy. And as we mourn the loss of all of those lives taken by violence, many people feel unsafe in their homes or in their communities. To remedy this, it starts with law enforcement, the people who protect us, and we must recruit and retain the best. When there are too many vacancies, it means that every other law enforcement officer has to carry a bigger load, and it means that they cannot cover as much territory. That's why in my budget, I am calling for raising the pay for all state law enforcement officers, correctional officers, and youth counselors, and offering hiring bonuses to new officers or those coming from out of state to work in state or local law enforcement agencies. My budget also gives law enforcement more tools that they need to succeed, including body cameras and Viper communications equipment. It includes behavioral threat assessments for our schools and more funding for school resource officers. It includes juvenile justice residential crisis unit to serve more young people who are experiencing mental health crises. It includes treatment for opioid use disorder in our correctional facilities so that people who are experiencing addiction can get help before they re-enter our communities. And it includes a fentanyl control unit of law enforcement and prosecutors to investigate and stop the flow of this deadly poison into our state.
You know, some good points there made by the governor, but similar to his discussion over education, he left one key thing out. It is not just money that is driving individuals away from law enforcement. It is catch and release policies by Democrat politicians in places like Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, like Raleigh and Wake County, in these deep blue areas where law enforcement arrests the same person over and over and over and over again, and they continually are back out on the streets, continuing to commit crimes and frankly just be a drag to society. Great comment coming in. Maybe vacancies are due to demoralizing law enforcement by letting criminals out on the street time after time. Of course, that's absolutely an issue. But similar to his discussion over education with no conversation at all about the metrics, the accountability metrics, the test and grading metrics, it's the same thing with law enforcement. Yes, we should increase their pay. No argument there at all. But we also have to make it a fruitful environment for them to work, where they don't feel like they're going out and doing a job only to let the same criminal out 30 times in a row before eventually he decides that he's going to slit open some girl's neck on the Charlotte Light Rail, a.k.a. DeCarlos Brown Jr., well known by law enforcement. That plays a major part in this as well. But no surprise, Governor Josh Stein, mum is the word on that. More from the governor. These are his closing remarks on his $35 billion spending spree.
Our goals are so important for the state. I want so much for North Carolina. Building an economy that works for everyone, strengthening our public schools and workforce, supporting families with the cost of living, keeping families safe and healthy, and maximizing the impact of every single tax dollar. We cannot afford to miss this moment. My budget, it's about opportunity. I believe that if you work hard, where you come from should never limit how far you can go. That is the promise of North Carolina. Delivering on that promise is what drives me as your governor. Delivering on that promise is what this budget is all about. I'm grateful to the General Assembly for its consideration of the budget, and I look forward to working with them in the coming weeks so that we can do right by every single North Carolinian.
Great. Thanks, Josh Stein. Greatly appreciated. They're not going to work with you. There's nothing in general statute, nothing in state law that requires them to work with you. They will come up with a budget themselves if that's what they decide to do. They will pass it in all likelihood. It's not going to be anywhere near where Josh Stein wants it to be because, as we've seen literally in this budget, he wants to increase spending by nearly $3 billion, tax and spend policies, as we see from Democrats all across the country. He will likely veto the budget, claiming it's not doing enough for the state of North Carolina. They will have to do a veto override, and then, of course, he will then be able to applaud teacher pay increases, continued job growth, continued move-ins, continued success, number one state for business here in North Carolina, while similar to his predecessor, vetoing budget after budget after budget after budget, and then seemingly pointing the finger at Republicans who have passed previous budgets, and the Democrats like Roy Cooper and Josh Stein have vetoed. So that is likely how this is set to play out. Republicans have got to get together and get a budget dealt with. It is going to be a major political issue for them as we get deeper into 2026. The short session is taking place right now. We'll bring you the details right here on the Nick Craig Show. Speaking of the short session, it was a busy day in Raleigh yesterday, as we talked about in great detail. The General Assembly gaveling back in for its 2026 short session. Unfortunately, for those that were keeping an eye on the veto override discussion, the North Carolina House did not, in fact, move forward with veto overrides yesterday. They were on the calendar, but as I mentioned yesterday morning here on the show. It did not appear obvious to me, and from what I had been told, that a veto override vote would be happening, and it is not. It still remains very unclear this morning when that will happen. Will there be votes in this short session on these 6 veto overrides, one of which being constitutional carry? From personally, I believe the answer is yes. I do strongly believe that will be the case. When will that happen? Well, that remains completely unclear. Looking at the calendar here for the short session, voting day today, in which we are likely to see some additional funding for Medicaid, which is, of course, completely blown out of proportion here in North Carolina, a major budget buster. That is expected to come forward today in Raleigh. No votes for the rest of this week. Lawmakers will be back next Tuesday and Wednesday, the 28th and 29th, for voting days then. And then we'll get into the month of May, where we have got a bunch of voting days. The week of May the 18th, votes expected Monday through Friday. Weeks before that, votes on Tuesday, Wednesday, and potentially Thursday. So there's going to be a lot that happens in the coming days and weeks. We will keep you up to date with all the details right here on the Nick Craig Show. So that is what we are tracking statewide. Some major breaking news across the nation yesterday as well, and internationally, a couple of quick things that I am keeping an eye on. There is an additional ceasefire with Iran, as President Donald Trump has announced that the Strait will remain blockaded by the United States Navy, claiming that he is going to essentially suffocate the Iranian economy by keeping the Strait closed for an extended period of time. We'll be keeping an eye on that. Virginia voters, and no surprise, approved a ballot measure that will allow the Virginia legislature to draw 4 Republican seats in Congress out of existence. It is time. The Florida legislature is expected to come back next week. They have to do the exact same thing, just on the other side. It's all in the name of fairness, as I understand it. So looking forward to some of that fairness down in the great state of Florida. And finally, the Southern Poverty Law Center indicted on federal fraud charges. My plan is to dig into that tomorrow morning right here on the Nick Craig Show, unless there's some major news that happens today, some major breaking news. We will dive into this very brutal story for the Southern Poverty Law Center. The long and the short is very simple. They were essentially paying people to be part of these hate groups that they had listed, and then fundraising, claiming these hate groups are growing in size, growing in membership. They were literally racketeering in this entire situation. We'll get into these federal indictments and these federal fraud charges coming up tomorrow right here on the Nick Craig Show. Want to thank the Law Group again for their continued support of the program. Visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call, 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. It's also available 24/7 in your favorite podcast app and is heard weeknights, 9 to 10 p.m. on WBT Radio in Charlotte. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll do it again tomorrow morning right here on The Nick Craig Show.